Hi, I'm Doug, and these are Wycliffe's words. God has a problem. He wants to communicate with us. He wants to tell us who He is. He wants us to understand who we are in the grand scheme of things. He wants to tell us the best way to live and the consequences of not living that way. But God has a problem. The Creator and the creation live in vastly different realms. He is spiritual. We're physical. He's eternal. We're mortal. He is all-knowing, and we are not. How can He explain the inexplicable? How can He draw back the curtain and reveal the invisible to the blind? Well, first He spoke to us directly in the garden, but we turned our backs. Next He spoke to us through His spokesmen, the prophets. He showed them cosmic truths, and they tried to communicate these divine revelations using visual imagery. They described fantastic, psychedelic visions of wheels within wheels, storm clouds and whirlwinds, precious stones and rainbows, sea monsters and dragons. Unfortunately, we're not adept at deciphering apocalyptic literature. And I must admit, I'm skeptical of those who claim to understand it all completely. So is there a better way? Yes, there is. In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets, but in these last days, He has spoken to us by His Son. Instead of sending messengers, He came to meet us face to face. But He still had to describe divine truth to a human audience. How could He bridge that chasm? Well, He did it best when He spoke to us in parables. His parables were effective because Jesus used the familiar to illustrate the unfamiliar. The people who didn't understand heaven, but they understood agriculture. So He said, the kingdom of heaven is like a man sowing seed, a fishing net, a mustard seed. They understood trade. So He said, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for pearls, a hidden treasure, a landowner. Take what you know, He says. Now multiply that 100 times, and maybe you'll get an inkling of who God is and what He wants for you. But parables are dangerous. They're simple stories meant to teach a specific lesson, to illustrate one concrete truth. We're often tempted to read too much into them. We can get dragged off onto tangents and get lost on theological rabbit trails. Parables aren't elaborate allegories, but simple object lessons. Wycliffe's language makes this clear. He uses the word parable quite often, but he also uses some revealing synonyms. He said to them also a likeness. He said by a similitude. We get into theological trouble if we make a parable too literal. We have to remember that Jesus is saying, this is like that. This is similar to that. It's our duty to discern the point of comparison and to ignore the rest. When we do that, we get to peek behind the curtain and catch a glimpse of God's true nature and His will for our lives. And what we do with that knowledge, well, that's our problem. And those are Wycliffe's words. See you again next week.